Sentinel-9 stood at the center of the assessment chamber aboard the Interstellar Academy station vehicle, its chrome-plated chassis humming at a frequency just below what most species could consciously detect. Most species. The Varathi cadets heard it and shifted nervously. The Kaylani cadets heard it and braced themselves. Even the iron-nerved Dravek, stone-blooded warriors from a planet of perpetual tectonic catastrophe, heard it and straightened their spines in involuntary response. Sentinel-9 was designed for exactly this. Fear assessment. Fear mapping. Fear exploitation, in the academic sense, to locate the precise psychological fault line in a cadet's psyche, stress-test it under controlled simulation, and generate a comprehensive report for the Academy's command staff. The machine had processed 9,412 cadets over 17 galactic cycles. It had never encountered an outlier it could not classify. Until today. The chamber seated 40 cadets in a wide arc. Each station was equipped with a neural haptic interface, a thin silver crown resting over the skull, capable of reading biometric signals, brainwave patterns, chemical releases, and micromuscular responses at a resolution that could distinguish between the fear of drowning and the fear of almost drowning. Sentinel-9 moved methodically down the row. Cadet Virathen, classified, fear of isolation, deep space variant. Severity, 7.2. Recommend paired assignments. Cadet Balatren, classified, fear of physical diminishment/inadequacy. Severity, 6.8. Recommend competitive challenge conditioning. Cadet Zan Juris is classified, fear of telepathic exposure. Severity, 8.1. Recommend privacy shielding protocols and counseling. Each assessment took between 4 and 11 minutes. Each cadet emerged from the neural interface pale, shaken, or visibly disturbed. 2 had to be escorted to the medical wing afterward. This was standard. Sentinel-9 recorded their data without comment, its optical sensors glowing a steady, clinical amber. Then it reached Station 31. Mara Ellison sat there, the only human in the cohort. She was 23 by Earth years, compact and unremarkable in the way that humans often appeared to other species at first glance. Brown hair pulled back. Eyes a flat, watchful gray. She was reading something on a datapad, apparently unconcerned that the machine responsible for psychologically dismantling 40 cadets was now standing directly in front of her. Cadet Ellison, Sentinel-9 said. You will place the interface crown upon your head and relax your conscious barriers. The assessment will begin in 30 seconds. Mara set down the datapad. Sure, she said. She placed the crown on her head with the casual ease of someone adjusting a hat. Sentinel-9 initiated the scan. The first thing it looked for was the fear architecture, the foundational terror. Every sentient species had one. For Varathi, it was abandonment. For Kaylani, it was sensory loss. For Dravek, strangely, it was stasis, the idea of nothing happening, no conflict, no motion, no change. For humans, the Academy's reference manual suggested a branching triad: mortality, meaninglessness, or helplessness. Sentinel-9 prepared simulations for all three. It began with mortality. The simulation it projected into the neural interface was a statistical model of a human's final moments, specifically constructed to trigger the biological adrenaline response associated with death recognition. It had worked on every carbon-based lifeform in its database. The simulation showed Mara's body failing. It showed the darkness at the end. Mara's brainwave pattern remained flat. Not suppressed, she wasn't blocking the signal. The neural haptic interface would have detected a suppression attempt. She was simply receiving the simulation, processing it, and not reacting with fear. Anomaly. Running secondary probe. Sentinel-9 shifted to meaninglessness, an existential simulation designed to confront the subject with the statistical insignificance of individual existence against the backdrop of cosmic scale. The simulation rendered the universe, then rendered Mara's life within it, a brief chemical flicker on a mid-sized rock circling an average star in an unremarkable arm of a galaxy among hundreds of billions. Mara's biometrics showed elevated interest. A small uptick in dopamine, actually. As though she found the simulation engaging. Sentinel-9 recalibrated. It tried helplessness next, the simulation of total loss of agency, a scenario where the subject watched catastrophe unfold and could do nothing. This one broke Kalani within seconds. It had caused 2 Dravet cadets to physically rip the interface crown off their heads in prior cycles. Mara watched the helplessness simulation for 6 full minutes. Her pulse elevated slightly. Her eyes moved behind their lids. Then, and this was the part Sentinel-9 would later note as the most statistically improbable event in its operational history, her biometrics shifted into a pattern the machine recognized from a completely different category of response. Problem-solving mode. She wasn't experiencing helplessness as a terror. She was treating it as a puzzle. Sentinel-9 pulled back the simulation. In the silence of the interface, it ran a diagnostic on its own systems, certain for a moment that something had malfunctioned. Everything checked out. The machine was operating within normal parameters. The human was not. Sentinel-9 had access to all xenopsychological literature filed with the Interstellar Academy. It cross-referenced human neurological studies in real time while Mara sat quietly in her chair, eyes still closed, waiting for whatever came next. The literature was unhelpful. It described humans as a species with high fear-response variability, a polite academic way of saying researchers couldn't agree on what humans were actually afraid of because the answers kept changing depending on the individual. Some humans listed death as their greatest fear. Others listed it last, behind public embarrassment or the failure of someone they loved. Some humans had voluntarily jumped from perfectly functional aircraft for recreational purposes. Some had walked into burning buildings for strangers. Some had stared into documented psychological horror simulations and written papers about the experience afterward. The reference manual had a footnote, almost apologetic in tone. Human fear response cannot be reliably modeled by standard xenopsychological frameworks. Fear in humans appears to exist in active dialogue with a secondary cognitive process not yet fully characterized, tentatively labeled stubbornness by researchers at the Veltharian Institute. Sentinel-9 processed this footnote for 0.003 seconds, which, for a machine of its processing speed, was a very long time. It returned to Mara. "I am going to try a different approach," it said. "Okay," said Mara. Sentinel-9 accessed its most extreme simulation, reserved exclusively for cases of exceptional psychological resilience. It was called the Cascading Loss Protocol. It didn't attack a single fear. It attacked all of them simultaneously, in sequence, accelerating, building. Loss of self. Loss of others. Loss of purpose. Loss of time. Loss of hope. It was the assessment equivalent of turning every dial to maximum and holding it there. Every sentient being who had ever undergone it, even voluntarily, in research contexts, had broken within 4 minutes. The average was 90 seconds. Mara lasted the full 8-minute protocol. Her biometrics, toward the end, showed something Sentinel-9 had no classification for. Her fear responses were present, she was not immune, not unfeeling. The readings showed grief, showed pain, showed something very close to anguish. But underneath those readings, steady and uninterrupted, was another signal. One that looked almost like resolve. The simulation ended. Mara opened her eyes. She looked at Sentinel-9 with those flat gray eyes, and she said nothing. She just waited, with the patience of someone who was very used to waiting. Sentinel-9 generated her assessment file. Every other cadet's file had taken between 40 seconds and 2 minutes to complete. Mara's file had a single line where the fear classification should have been. Unknown white heavy checkmark. Commander Yethsalara reviewed the reports in her office 3 hours later. She was Kalani, 4-armed, silver-scaled, 40 years of command experience. She had seen strange assessments before. She had never seen one like this. She called Sentinel-9 into her office. "Explain the human's file," she said. "I am unable to classify Cadet Ellison's primary fear architecture," Sentinel-9 said. "She possesses fear responses. They are measurable and genuine. However, they do not appear to function as primary motivators. Every sentient species in my database is ultimately moved by fear. It shapes decisions, determines limits, establishes the psychological ceiling of capability. And the human? In Cadet Ellison, fear appears to function as information. She receives it. She processes it. She then proceeds anyway. I have no framework for an organism that experiences fear without being governed by it." Commander Yefsalara was quiet for a long moment. "What do you recommend?" she asked. Sentinel-9 considered the question carefully. "I recommend," it said, "that we place Cadet Ellison in command track. Immediately." It paused, a processor cycle's worth of hesitation. "And I recommend that we update our xenopsychological manual. The footnote on humans is insufficient. They do not lack fear. They have simply made a different arrangement with it." Down in the cadet barracks, Mara Ellison was reading her datapad again. She didn't know what the machine had written about her. She wouldn't have been surprised. She had always known, in the wordless way that humans know things, that fear was never the end of anything. It was just the beginning.